All right, so everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
It's great to be back.
And today we're tackling a really big one. We're going to be looking at the potential impact of Trump's second term on the diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda.
Right.
And we're going to be calling it DEI from now on because it's a mouthful.
Yeah, it is.
So DEI, we've got reports from legal experts, we've got business analysts.
Wow.
We even have some stuff from advocacy groups like the ACLU.
Interesting.
Yeah, so kind of a mixed bag here. But they all give us a pretty interesting picture of what the future might hold.
I think so.
And I think it's going to be particularly interesting for our listeners.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about potential impacts that reach far beyond the U.S.
Yeah, that's the thing about U.S. policy. It often sets a precedent, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it sort of influences global trends. And in this case with DEI, there's a lot of apprehension about which way things might be going.
Apprehension, that's putting it mildly.
Yeah.
Paramount, they're a leading DEI research and consulting firm.
Okay.
They found that 93% of DEI leaders believe that a second Trump term will negatively impact their efforts.
Yeah.
That's practically everyone in the field who's saying batten down the hatches.
Yeah.
To understand why, I guess we need to take a quick look back at Trump's first term, right?
Exactly. I think that's crucial to kind of remember that the seeds for this unease were really sown during that first term.
Okay.
Do you remember the 1776 commission that was created to promote what they called a patriotic education?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people saw it as a direct counter to movements like the 1619 Project, which really highlighted the legacy of slavery and systemic racism in the U.S.
Of course.
And this rhetoric, labeling DEI initiatives as Marxist and woke, has just continued into his current campaign.
Right, so it's not just a change in the administration.
Yeah, it's a potential shift.
A potential shift in ideology that's got people
in ideology
a little worried.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see that corporate America is already reacting.
Oh, really?
Even before any concrete policies have put in place.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Gravity research found that the use of terms like DEI and diversity in official communications actually decreased by 22% in 2024.
Wow.
And meanwhile, more neutral language like belonging and diverse perspectives saw a big jump and increase by about 60%.
Interesting. So are they just swapping out buzzwords, or is this like a genuine shift?
Yeah, I mean, you can change the label on the box, but does that actually change what's inside?
It's a good question, and that's where I think this analysis gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Some people argue it's just a pragmatic move, just avoid the political scrutiny. Why paint a target on your back if you can avoid it? Right? But others see it as kind of a concerning trend that suggests a weakening commitment to the core values of DEI.
It's almost like companies are trying to fly under the radar, hoping they don't become collateral damage in a cultural war.
Right.
But let's face it, DEI is about more than just words. It's about actions. It's about policies.
For sure.
And it's about real systemic change. And that's where the rubber meets the road.
Absolutely. And this brings us, I think, to maybe the most concerning element of all.
Okay.
The Heritage Foundation's Project 2025.
Right.
This is a comprehensive plan, almost a blueprint for dismantling DEI efforts across the federal government and even beyond.
Okay, so now we're not talking about vague anxieties anymore.
Yeah.
We're talking about a concrete plan of action.
Exactly.
What exactly does this Project 2025 entail?
Well, it's pretty extensive, but some key provisions include things like removing DEI language from federal legislation, investigating corporate DEI practices for potential reputational laundering, and prohibiting any race or gender-based DEI initiatives in any federally funded organizations.
Wow, so they're not just rolling back progress, they're actively trying to erase.
It seems that way.
The whole concept of DEI from the public sphere.
Yeah.
I can see why DEI leaders might be feeling a little bit of pressure right now.
For sure, and remember, this is just a proposal.
Right.
It's not official policy yet.
Okay.
At least not yet. But it's a clear indication of the direction that some pretty influential groups are pushing for.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that the impact of all of this extends far beyond the U.S.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the impact on DEI globally. How does this U.S.-centric plan affect the rest of the world?
Well, the U.S. often sets a precedent.
Right.
And if there's a rollback on DEI efforts here, it could embolden anti-DEI movements internationally.
Oh, I see.
The ACLU specifically addressed this in their analysis, expressing concern that Trump's stance could actually have a ripple effect and weaken global commitment to DEI.
So it's like a domino effect.
Kind of, yeah.
If the U.S., which is often seen as a leader in DEI, backpedals, it gives other countries permission to do the same.
Exactly.
That's a pretty sobering thought.
Yeah.
But before we all spiral into despair, let's be realistic. Companies are already adapting.
Right.
They're not just sitting back and waiting to see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
They're actively preparing for a very different landscape.
And that's what we're going to delve deeper into in the next part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
We'll explore how DEI leaders are strategizing, how they're reframing their initiatives, and how they're preparing to fight for a more diverse and inclusive future, regardless of the political headwinds.
Sounds good. So we've talked about all this anxiety surrounding the future of DEI under a second Trump term.
Yeah.
But the Saramount report also highlights how DEI leaders are already adapting. They're not just sitting back and waiting.
No, they're not.
They're actually preparing
Yeah.
for a very different landscape.
It really is a testament to the resilience of the whole DEI movement. I mean, despite all these challenges, there's a real sense of determination to figure out a way forward.
Yeah. And the report outlines 3 key strategies that DEI leaders are already employing.
Interesting.
And I think they're really insightful.
Yeah.
Let's dive into those strategies.
Okay.
What's the first one?
Well, the first one is something that Saramount calls reframing DEI initiatives.
Okay.
And it's all about shifting the focus from the social justice argument to the business case for DEI.
So instead of saying diversity is the right thing to do, they're saying diversity makes us more profitable.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay.
They're highlighting how diversity leads to increased innovation, a better understanding of diverse customers, and improved employee retention.
Okay.
They're making the case that DEI is not just ethically sound, it's a smart business strategy.
I see. So it's a clever approach.
Yeah.
Especially if you're trying to win over stakeholders who maybe aren't totally on board with the social justice aspect.
Yeah.
You're taking the emotion out of it and you're focusing on cold, hard facts.
Right.
But does that undermine the core values of DEI?
Well, that's a valid concern. And it's a delicate balancing act, for sure.
Yeah.
But the hope is that by demonstrating these clear business benefits of DEI, they can build a stronger foundation for lasting change.
Okay.
Once those benefits become undeniable, the ethical arguments are much harder to ignore.
It's like sneaking in the vegetables with the mac and cheese.
Exactly.
You get the kids that eat healthy without even realizing it.
Exactly.
Okay, so what's the second strategy?
All right, this one's a bit more subtle.
Okay.
Saramount calls it stealth implementation.
Stealth implementation.
Basically, it's about continuing DEI efforts internally while avoiding external political scrutiny.
So keeping a low profile.
Yeah.
Not shouting about your DEI initiatives from the rooftops.
Exactly. It's about quietly building a strong foundation of DEI within the organization, fostering inclusive practices, promoting diverse leadership, but all while kind of avoiding becoming a target for political backlash.
So they're going underground.
Yeah.
But is that sustainable in the long run?
Well, that is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
It's a risky strategy.
Yeah.
But in a hostile environment, it might be the only way to protect those gains and keep the momentum going.
Okay.
The hope is that by quietly creating a more inclusive and equitable workplace, those positive changes will eventually become so ingrained in the culture that they can't be easily undone.
It's like planting a seed in secret.
Yeah.
And letting it grow strong roots before you expose it to the elements.
I like that.
Okay, so we've got reframing, we've got stealth implementation. What's the third strategy?
So the third one is all about collaboration.
Okay.
DEI leaders are recognizing that they can't go it alone in this kind of climate.
Yeah.
They need to build strong partnerships with legal and compliance teams to navigate any potential legal and regulatory hurdles that might come up.
So being proactive,
Yes.
anticipating the challenges,
Yeah.
and having that legal expertise to make sure that their efforts are bulletproof.
Precisely.
Okay.
They're working hand in hand with legal experts, trying to understand the evolving legal landscape, identifying potential vulnerabilities, and just ensuring that all of their programs are compliant with any new regulations or executive orders.
So they're preparing for battle.
Yeah.
Arming themselves with all the knowledge and expertise.
Exactly.
But it's not just about legal protection, is it?
No, it goes beyond that.
Okay.
It's also about building a coalition of support within the organization.
Right.
They're partnering with other departments, finding allies in HR, in marketing, even in finance, creating a network of individuals who really understand the value of DEI and who are willing to champion those efforts.
So it's about building a movement from within.
Yeah.
Creating a critical mass of support that can withstand any external pressures or political shift.
Right. It's like they're saying, okay, you might try to dismantle DEI from the top down, but we're going to rebuild it from the bottom up.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It's about embedding DEI into the very fabric of the organization, making it so integral to the company's culture and operations that it becomes impossible to extricate.
Exactly.
It's a long game.
It is.
But it's a game that they seem determined to win.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that these strategies, while they were born out of necessity, might actually lead to a more sustainable and impactful approach to DEI in the long run.
I agree.
Yeah, by focusing on that business case, building that internal support,
Right.
and really understanding that legal landscape, DEI leaders are creating a framework that's less vulnerable to those political whims and more likely to create lasting change.
It's like they're building a fortress.
Yeah.
One brick at a time.
Brick by brick.
Making sure that that foundation is strong enough to withstand any storm.
Exactly.
But let's face it, it's not just about what companies do.
No.
It's about what individuals do.
Absolutely.
We all have a role to play.
We do.
In creating a more inclusive and equitable society.
I completely agree. And that brings us, I think, to a really crucial question.
Okay.
What can individuals do in their own workplaces and communities to actually support and advance DEI?
Yeah.
Regardless of what the political climate looks like.
That's what we'll focus on in the final part of our deep dive. We've been talking about these corporate strategies and the potential legal challenges.
Yeah.
And even that blueprint for dismantling DEI efforts.
That's a lot.
Yeah. But in all of this, there's a force that often gets overlooked. And that's the power of individual action.
Yeah, you're right. It's easy to feel like just one person can't really make a difference, especially when we're talking about these huge systemic issues.
Yeah, you feel so small.
Yeah. But the truth is that individual actions, those everyday choices that we all make, they collectively shape the culture of our workplaces and our communities.
So it's not just about what's happening in the White House or in some boardroom.
Yeah.
It's about what's happening, in the break room at our desks, even in our virtual meetings, right?
Sure.
It's about how we interact with each other, how we speak up, how we challenge biases, how we create a sense of belonging.
It's all those little things that add up.
Yeah, and what I think is so encouraging is that the desire for change is there.
I agree.
The Saramount study found that over 3/4 of U.S. employees are committed to supporting their employers in combating racism and injustice.
That's huge.
And almost 80% say that they really value working in an inclusive organization.
So the will is there.
Yeah, the will is there.
Yeah.
The question is, how do we translate that will into action?
Right. What can individuals actually do to make a difference?
Yeah.
Well, I think it starts with education.
Okay.
The ACLU, they emphasize the importance of understanding the legal framework surrounding DEI.
Right.
Knowing your rights, being able to identify and challenge discriminatory practices.
So knowledge is power.
Absolutely. The more you understand about the issues, the better equipped you are to advocate for change.
Like having a toolbox.
Yeah.
You need the right tools to do the job effectively.
Exactly.
So understanding your legal rights,
Right.
recognizing microaggressions, being aware of implicit bias.
Right.
These are all tools that empower us to act.
And it's not just about knowing the law.
Right.
It's about being aware of your own biases. It's about seeking out diverse perspectives and challenging those isms, racism, sexism, ageism, ableism.
Wow.
Whenever you encounter them.
Right.
Whether it's, in a meeting or a casual conversation or even on social media.
Yeah.
Those small moments of courage can really make a difference.
So having those uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah.
calling out those inappropriate jokes, speaking up when you see someone being marginalized or excluded.
It's not always easy.
No.
But it is necessary.
And it's about being an ally, supporting colleagues from underrepresented groups, amplifying their voices, creating a space where everyone feels safe and respected.
And sometimes it's about stepping back and letting others take the lead.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that we all have blind spots.
Of course.
And we can learn from each other.
For sure.
Sometimes the most powerful act of allyship
Yeah.
is simply listening and believing.
Absolutely. And remember, creating a truly inclusive workplace.
Yeah.
It's not just the responsibility of HR or the DEI department.
Right.
It's a collective effort.
Yeah.
It's about each of us taking ownership and creating a culture where everyone feels like they belong.
It's interesting because we started this deep dive by exploring, the potential negative impact of a second Trump term on DEI. But it seems like what's emerging is a much more nuanced picture.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, there are definitely challenges.
For sure.
But there's also this incredible resilience.
Yeah.
There's innovation and there's this groundswell of individual action that can't be ignored.
It's a powerful reminder that change doesn't always come from the top down.
Right.
It often starts with individual.
Yeah.
With those everyday acts of courage and compassion.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a challenge.
Okay.
What can you do in your own sphere of influence to be an advocate for DEI?
Good question.
Maybe it's mentoring a junior colleague.
Yeah.
Maybe it's speaking up in a meeting. Maybe it's just educating yourself about the issues.
It all makes a difference.
Whatever it is, take that step. Be that agent of change.
I love that.
Because even when things feel uncertain, even when the political winds are blowing in a different direction, we have the power to create a more equitable and a more inclusive future.
I agree.
Knowledge is power.
It is.
And we hope that this deep dive is giving you both the knowledge and the inspiration to make a difference. Thanks for joining us.